Now let's turn to marriage and family. Marriage is a socially structured union between two people who are likely to be, but are not necessarily co-resident, sexually involved with each other, and procreative. In the US, academic couples sometimes have jobs and universities far apart and see each other on weekends and vacations. Military couples can also spend considerable time apart. By definition, marriage involves rights to sexual access, but of course not all couples are sexually active. As the song goes, "Where has the love gone?" Finally, marriage surely entails socially sanctioned procreation, but this is not always the case. In 2015 in the US, 40.6% of births were out of wedlock. Let's look at marriage comparatively. Most societies recognize some form of marriage, but values regarding marriage vary greatly. Thus, marriage is best defined by its functions. Marriage regulates sexual intercourse, assigns nurturing of children to culturally recognized parents and their relatives, allocates mutual rights and duties or roles to the wife and husband, and creates new family relationships. In many cultures, marriage creates not only new family units, but also forges important social relations between affines or in-laws. Now let's take each of these functions one by one. Marriage regulates sexual intercourse. In marriage, there are not necessarily simply rules about sex with someone under. Marriage regulates sexual intercourse. In marriage, there are rules about sex with someone other than one's spouse, but these rules may vary between cultures or between genders. Larger sets of restrictions or rules concerning sexual conduct are important and often operate beyond spouses. The incest taboo, for example, prohibits sexual relations or marriage between certain kinds of relatives. Marriage regulates sexual intercourse. In marriage, there are rules about sex with someone other than one's spouse, but these may vary between cultures or between genders. Larger sets of restrictions or rules concerning sexual conduct are important and often operate beyond spouses. The incest taboo, for example, prohibits sexual relations between certain kinds of relatives. Incest rules, that is, the prohibition of sex and marriage between certain classes of kin, govern sexual behavior. Note that these rules vary even in the US. 25 states prohibit marriage between first cousins, while 6 states allow first cousin marriage under certain conditions. No US states ban second cousin marriage. In some societies, first cousin marriage is a preferred form of marriage. Exogamy, or marrying outside your social group, rules govern conjugal behavior. A key reason for exogamy usually has to do with the ability to form alliances outside your group. Some form of marriage is almost universal, but there are possible exceptions. Let's compare the Nayar of Old India and the Na of modern China. There is considerable debate as to whether the Nayar of Old India practiced formal marriage. Some men and women consummated a sort of marriage around the age of puberty, formalized by a nuptial ceremony. Couples were not, however, co-residential. Women lived together with their children. Women had more than one visiting husband, either simultaneously or sequentially. The Na of China, farmers in the Himalayan region, live without the institution of marriage. Na brothers and sisters live together their entire lives, raising the women's children. Since, like other societies, the Na respect the incest prohibition, they practice a system of furtive or conspicuous night visits during which a man goes to a woman's home. Based on these two cases, we can make the following points. Arguably, there is no marriage, even minimally defined. There are no nuclear families, and the functions usually found in marriages and nuclear families were performed by other kinds of family relationships. Forms of endogamy and exogamy are important as they culturally define rules that sanction marriage within and outside of designated social groups. Endogamy refers to the rules of marrying within a certain category, social group, or locality. Examples include Indian castes and U.S. miscegenation laws. Miscegenation refers to the marriage between people of two different racial groups. Exogamy is the rule that one must marry outside a social category, social group, or locality. Examples include Australian tribes and Gabonese clans. Some societies distinguish between parallel and cross cousins. We don't do so in the US, so it's hard for us to imagine why this might be important. Parallel cousins are the children whose parents are the same-sex siblings of ego's parents. The children of ego's father's brother are ego's patrilateral parallel cousins. The children of mother's sister are ego's matrilateral parallel cousins. Cross cousins are the children of opposite-sex siblings of ego's parents. The children of ego's father's sister are ego's patrilateral cross cousins. The children of mother's brother are ego's matrilateral cross cousins. Who cares? Some people do a lot, as your preferred marriage partner might be your parallel cousin or your cross cousin. Such forms of endogamy serve to strengthen important family groups and to keep inherited wealth in the family. Among Bedouin Arabs, patrilateral parallel cousin marriage is preferred. Among the Yanomami of Brazil, the preferred form is cross-cousin marriage. Another crucial question societies must resolve is how many spouses one can marry. Here are 4 forms of marriage. Monogamy, where one may marry one spouse. Polygyny, rather than polygamy, in which one man is able to marry 2 or more wives. Polyandry, in which one woman may marry multiple husbands. And group marriage, in which several men and women are married simultaneously to one another. But don't ask me about that one. It was in the textbook. The Western world's most widely accepted creation myth defines human origins in terms of a monogamous couple. A common current Euro-American myth is that women are inherently monogamous, while men are naturally polygynous, hence marital dissatisfaction. Serial monogamy may not correspond to our ideology, but a common form of marriage in the US and elsewhere is serial monogamy. Serial monogamy means having several marriage partners, one after the other, not at the same time. As one of my students once put it, get married, get divorced, get married, get divorced, one disaster after another. About 40% of married Americans have been married more than once, and 8% at least 3 times. Here, we see the late actress Elizabeth Taylor with her 7 husbands. She was actually married 8 times, as she and actor Richard Burton were married twice. When we say polygamy, one spouse with multiple spouses of the other sex, we usually mean what anthropologists call polygyny, which refers to one husband with 2 or more wives. Sororal polygyny occurs when one husband marries 2 sisters. Polyandry refers to one wife with multiple husbands. Here you see a Nyinba bride from Tibet with her 3 grooms. In the readings for this module, we'll read Goldstein's When Brothers Take a Wife about fraternal polyandry in Tibet. In addition to being prohibited by bigamy laws, polyandry is extremely rare in the United States for obvious reasons. In addition to being prohibited by bigamy laws, polyandry is extremely rare in the United States for obvious reasons, if you look at the cartoon. How do societies respond to the death of a spouse, particularly when widows and widowers are still capable of bearing and raising children? The ancient Hebrews practiced leveret. Deuteronomy 25 verses 5 and 6 states the rule. If brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his brother who is dead, that his name not be blotted out of Israel. Widow inheritance is similar, but usually the children of the couple will recognize a new husband as their father. Also, the kin of the late spouse may propose someone else to replace the deceased husband. Widows usually have a choice as to whether or not to accept the proposed husband. Sororit refers to the practice whereby the widower marries or has sexual relations with the sister of his wife after her death, or if she cannot have children. In the previous module, we've already discussed bride wealth, a widespread practice around the world. Bride service is another form of matrimonial compensation. In this case, the husband spends an extended period of time, often several years, residing with and working for the family of his bride. The Jewasi of the Kalahari practice bride service, in which the son-in-law hunts for his affines. Dowry involves the transfer of wealth or property from the bride's family to the daughter and her husband's family. If you've ever read or seen Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, you'll remember that dowry was practiced among the British landed gentry. The main character, Elizabeth Bennet, is beautiful, intelligent, and lively, but lacks decent marriage prospects because she has 4 sisters and her father lacks sufficient property to provide a proper dowry.